So you can start.
So yeah, we were discussing the other question, whether about what is sustainable art.
So I will start with that then to answer on these questions, because this was for me also for several years. I was trying to figure it out how to be sustainably, ecologically aware as an artist also, in the sense that in my presentations and in my projects, as you will see in different slides, which I prepared today for us, I work a lot with materials that I try to either reconstruct, or that they are materials which they are easier for the environment, in the sense that they are not like heavy impact materials. And also for me, it's very important how to, like many of these installations, they look big and complex, but actually when I put them into the boxes for shipping, they're very, very modular. This means that I'm able to put them into small boxes. Through this, the impact when we travel and when we ship this kind of materiality is always then lower impact on the environment, you know. So there's many different layers which I try to think about. One layer, but is of course also like how the even approach the different environments. And I was lucky enough that I was several times, like I like to say that my art is powered by the field recordings and travel and spending time at different oceans and seas, as some of my main interest in general into arts and how to reflect on this kind of ecological situations and geopolitical tensions which are happening these days are also always possible to see and experience through different watery bodies. I was also taking part in Galapagos in one part of one explorations, and I have some special songs for you prepared to listen from that part of the world. I was artist in residence also in the Baltic Sea, which I was recording many different territories. And one project which I started when I was in artist in residence on Tara, it's a research vessel, is actually related to the munitions which they are dumped into oceans and seas, and which they are also like leaking into environment. So in one of my latest work, which I will also present today, is I want to speak about this, how the geopolitical conflicts and situations which they are so very present to all of us these days. Many of you also traveled or had to move from some parts of the world just because it started to be a bit too dangerous to stay there. And this kind of geopolitical consequences, they of course traumatize us people, but also the ecological kind of content. Especially I like to speak about how the geopolitical crisis with dropping bombs at each other, we are like actually going in ecology 50 years back immediately when stuff like this is happening. So it's also shattering a bit all these kind of ideas what ecology is these days, I think. Anyhow, ocean is one of the most industrial areas, which maybe sometimes is not perceived like that. As oceans and rivers, we like to use them as a recreation or reflection, or just go there to have our vacations. But many goods, like almost everything what we use on daily basis, our computers, our electronics, everything was in one moment in time on one of these boats. Also our clothes. That's why the fashion has so many problematics, because one thing is also the shipping, another thing is also how it's done. And this is something which, because it's kind of like in the watery area, we forget that there is also lots of sound present because of that. And before I will speak about my practice, I would like to show you some videos which they present the vivid oceanic sound. So let's listen to some fish.
Whenever I tell people that fish have ears, they look at me like I'm mad.
But not only that, people are surprised by the really unusual sounds that fish can make, and especially on a coral reef. When we're listening to a reef, we hear the snapping shrimp crackling away. And then as we add in chirping, perhaps, of some fish that are trying to impress a female on a nesting site. And then we've got the clownfish that are using sounds to communicate within a colony and particularly to warn each other of a predator. These are fish and invertebrates that are making sound for a range of different reasons. They're sometimes trying to find prey, and they might be hunting together, so they're actually talking to each other while they do this. They might be trying to detect predators. Obviously, they want to avoid any predators. But they're also then using sound to establish a territory, to impress each other. So it's a bit like listening to a full orchestra, and it produces this wonderful cacophony of biological sound.
And here I will stop with this video now, because we have lots of topics to go in. But for me, it's just good to give you the idea what is the core of my projects and what I like to speak about is especially, and that's why I like this video, is like I like to present the sound of the fish not only as some noises or sonic patterns, but they're actually communicating with each other. They're talking with each other. They're chit-chatting, and that's something that it's not very well known, but I always like to explain. If you go to the forest and you are for the first time in forest, what you hear is cacophony of the sounds, no? And when you come to the second time in your life to the forest, you start to hear that there are different sounds and there are different creatures doing the sounds. And then more times we spend in this kind of environments, more we kind of distinguish and understand, okay, this sound goes with this bird and it's a special time. And it's the same with the fish and marine life. And I like to show this also because, you know, for whales and dolphins, it's kind of known already that they have not only sounds for mating and warning each other, but they're actually talking with each other. They're exchanging experiences. And this is something which is like mostly as humans, we think about us, that we are so special with our communication skills and our storytellings and things. And we sometimes forget that there are other creatures which they have the same patterns, just maybe not in the same sensory perception that we are used to. So one of the works that reflects on this kind of thing that I worked with is like Aurelia 1 plus Hertz. It's a project where I was doing research on the jellyfish, which are very, very different, unknown, and it's really hard to understand, do they like something, do they feel comfortable, not, you know, especially it's always different when I met them in the oceans and seas. They're very, very persistent creatures, you know. They live more than most of the creatures. They are like 500 million years old by some predictions. But then still, when you bring them to the aquariums, into the setting which is much more controlled, they're very fragile. So for me, to have them inside of the gallery space is always very, very important to give them the best possible living environment. So the tanks around, because of the circulation of the water, because the jellyfish, they are not swimmers per se, but they are like drifters in the oceans. So it depends how they are like, so the drifting is giving the rhythm. And then because of this in tanks, the constant travel is important for them. Within the project, I decided to have a performance, like especially in the second part of the project, I wanted to have this kind of live performance that me and jellyfish will share the stage. And part of the sound, and I will show you this now, part of the sound, I have the narrator also talking, but I will just explain you what you will see and then I will be silent a bit. But so partly the sound was like conducted by the jellyfish and partly by me. And the performance actually finishes like this, that I go down from the stage. The sound is anyway very loopy, very repetitive. There's lots of aquatic recordings, which they're in different levels put together, and some sonification of the data of the jellyfish. So through that, I tried to give them this kind of like rhythm. And with this, on the end, when I go down from the stage and just they stay up there, I give them the space. At least this is my idea, my interpretation of my work.
The most substantial aims of Aurelia 1 plus Hertz proto-viva sonification are to explore the phenomena of interspecies communication, sonification of the environment, and the underwater acoustic. The performance features live-generated sound by the moon jellyfish and the performer. Sound loops consist of recordings and sonic experiments with jellyfish in a closed environment, and pre-recorded sounds of the jellyfish blooms at sea. These are mixed in generative sound, which is assembled into an immersive sonic and visual experience. Jellyfish are tracked with a Raspberry Pi.
Okay, so then it goes more into technical information. And because we said that we will go more into the sound and sonic stuff, I will not jump. I will be quicker with some slides and slower with some. If you have some question, please stop me or write them down and we can answer to them. And I hope that everybody understands everything clearly, or there is some questions happening. For now, everything is good. I see the chat is not... Okay. So what you see here is like the map to understand how deep the oceans is and what does it means that, because in oceans, I like to say that us humans, we are visual animals. So visual is one of the main sensory perception of the world around us. And in ocean, all this is changing. In ocean, we are in 3D world. It's like up, down, left, right. It's a bit different because, we humans, we are terrestrial animals. We walk on the seabed of the atmosphere, which is around us. And in the ocean, there is not there is also some creatures which they're just on the seabed, but most of them, they're using all this kind of 3D world. And after 200 meters, very quickly, there is this kind of twilight. After 1,000 meters, starts to be dark. And and then this darkness just kind of increases. There's question, Ola, or? Okay. And what does it mean? That is like, and why I started to speak about the sound in the ocean is that the fish and all the animals which they're living there, they're navigating between each other through the sound. Why so? Because the sound travels 5 times wider and stronger in the ocean than in the air. I don't know if you experience ever walking in the fog around the world, but I did because I'm coming from area where there can be very foggy and it can be uncanny, uncomfortable just because visual is very limited in that moment. Plus the other problem starts to happen because the sound is much more present. And this is just because the water is better conductor of the sound. So that's why also the lots of animals in the oceans, they're using the sound of their kind of presence. The problem is because of us humans, of course, we like to use the same environments, and then we learned from the animals how to use the sonars. Idea for sonars was actually happening through this, that we started to understand the sound travels in the water much longer and wider. So that's why the sound and beaming of the sound is one of the main technologies when we are looking for oil and this kind of stuff in the oceans. And technologically, we like to exploit the oceanic seabeds in different levels and places that it's kind of quite intense. So this extractivism is something that I also like to critique and just like put out there to be thinking about it. But I like to organize also different workshops. Like here we went with some participants to listen to different areas where we find also some shrimps. And now I will play you a bit of the sound. And I'm curious if you will be able to tell me which animals do you hear. Oh, wait, maybe this one is the... Sorry, it was the wrong video. Do you hear good? You can write in the chat what do you think you hear, or you can also use emojis to show me which animal you think that is like doing the sound. Ah, yes. This, as one of your colleagues pointed out, these are shrimp and crabs and all these different crustaceans where they do kind of sounds. Yeah. And then after a while, it starts to be much louder. Very annoying also. At my Let's go out of that. But this, what you heard now for the last seconds, was actually on the beginnings, they came in shrimps. So there was one person who wrote the shrimp, Alina. And the second thing, what you heard, there have been recordings of the ships, one tanker, which was like driving. And when I record in the oceans and seas, mostly I hear that. Like it's very rarely and amazing when you can hear animals. And that's why I will play, some specific sound that I recorded at Galapagos, where is not so much boats. And because of that, there is actually sounds of the fish present. But at Adriatic Sea, like this is my native sea here in it's mostly, sadly, boats and machinery, which is like what you can hear. You don't need to have like excellent equipment to record it. I started to record actually with the hydrophones that I was building by myself. I'm happy to share instructions how to do that with your group because you can do stuff also very simple and basic. And then of course I started to buy different material and also work with different scientists because they have equipment on the boats also, which is great. But in general, I think if you have the energy and interest, there is always possible to listen to things just to explore them. So I'm happy to share that with Ola and Alena, then the instructions how to build your hydrophone, and they can send you to you. Are you curious to hear more Galapagos sound? And as you see on one of the photos, there have been sea lions, which they love to eat the hydrophones. So they have been constantly chewing on them. This was mostly in other seas, you have problem because there's all the time some boats that you hear. And here it was the other thing, the sea lions, they're extremely curious creatures. So they like to come very near to you and they like to chew on the hydrophones. So this is a bit more condensed, This is a combination of many, many different sound recordings at the same time. So For some of them, there's some fish, they do this kind of growing sound. Yeah, it's like a natural techno, definitely. My favorite are princess, I like to use them. They do really interesting rhythms. It's similar like crickets or, when you hear crickets in different areas, they have different rhythms. So it's the same as with sheep. And then these are the sounds of some specific. So I just tried to show you something also. There is some very cool web page like this one where you can find sounds of different animals. For the ones which, if you will be curious, I can send you this also here in the chat. It's like Rhode Island University. They have been doing many years the research on different fish and recordings of that. But it's always like this, that crickets have different rhythms depending on which part of the world you listen to them. It's the same also with fish. All these different fish, they will have like it, even the same fish will have different sonic imprint. So just to help you to understand, because with me you heard lots of different sounds together, here's just the sound of this fish, of the dam fish. So when you hear it for the first time, I'm pretty sure, like also for me, it takes a time to adjust the ear to listen to them because we are not used to it. As I told you before, when you go to the forest, first experience is something, and then the second is something else, or to the park or somewhere, or to the new city. The sound of the new city is always different. Also, the nature is part of the city, so the sound of the birds which you hear in specific cities. Like when you hear seagulls, you know that you're somewhere near either big river or the ocean, no? But also this can change lately because also we started to have some owls here in Slovenia, in Ljubljana, which they haven't been before here. So for me, as you see, this kind of research related to the sound and the water beings is something that is like really near to my heart. And one of these kind of great experience I had when I was like in 2019, artist in resident in Irish boat. It's like Celtic Explorer. And there I was recording like different moments and being there on the boat. And for me, being there, it started to be very interesting how we differently react to specific animals. So the measurement of these two creatures are really out of proportions, On one side is the shelves, which they're actually in life, they're like so small, like really as your fingernail. And the basking sharks are one of the biggest sharks, which they are like plankton eating sharks. So they're like really these huge creatures, which they're just gliding by the boat, always. And they have been just around us because they are like catching plankton. They try to be as up as possible to catch it by the water. And for me, it was just interesting because, the scientists which I was working with, they have been super excited to find these little shells because this means that they are like helping to build up the reefs and how to build the reefs and give the lots of different environments and spaces to this multi-layered ecosystem of marine life in specific areas. So they are very important because they are like producing this kind of liquidy glue, which kind of helps to hold it together. And they're really invisible and they're very specific for that area. But people mostly don't know them. And then these basking sharks, which they are the sharks which they can be found on many different places around the world. All the people from the Irish team, they have been always extremely excited to see them. And they all told me that this is either their symbol animal or animal which they feel very connected with. And then I was started to talk why and how, no? Because it's migratory species. But the Irish, they have this kind of like, they love to paddle and go to see them and be with them because they're really, really this kind of like really tender giants. And then I went to read a bit more on the past stories about the basking sharks. And in 17th century, they almost died out because, they have been their liver was one of the main sources for our oil lamps. So basking shark is one of these examples how one animal went from being industrial animal, like animal which was used for the just for the production of something, into the symbolic animal and cultural emblem of some specific region. And when talking about this and thinking about that, I developed a story where I invited also two Irish singers to sing along. So I have here, and it's 5 minutes sound piece. The whole sound piece is actually 40 minutes and it can go in constant loop, but here for presentation, I have 5 minutes. So let's listen to this and go further then. Actually, 7 minutes, I'm sorry. And it's again combo of the field recordings and here I recorded above the water, underwater, and there is also a story that comes with it. And I really wanted to work with the Irish singers to have somebody who speaks the local language and the language of the territory.
New environments are dissected from both conducive and they are together in this loop which shapes the Earth's climate. The creatures travel with it and against it. They know how to harness its nature to find optimal living conditions. The human imprint has brought us such drastic developments to change water inside out. The world's waters are getting warmer, and in consequence, the winds are getting faster. Aquaforming is Every aspect of this vast oceanic system can be viewed as holding memory, from short-term to long-term, individualized and collective. The ocean of today is filled with life. This life encodes memories of its ancestors. Its waters are full of untold stories of the creatures who had been floating and lining the waters of the ocean in its pre-existing states. The genetically informative DNA and RNA molecules which direct the production of proteins and other life's building blocks are part of the water structure.
Or we should say they knew. The human imprint has brought on such a drastic development to change water inside and out. The world's waters are warmer, and in consequence, the winds are even faster too.
And we drift, and we glide.
Aquaforming is the present. It confuses all who consider the ocean their home. Hear them, hear their stories. The memories that basking sharks, flame shells, and other creatures, human and non-human. Every aspect of this vast oceanic system can be viewed as holding memory. From the short term to the long term, individualized and collective. The ocean of today is filled with life. This life encodes memories of its ancestors. A basking shark is a fish, a big one. And these sunbathing giants sleep in the ocean deep.
Okay, so oops. So the work is actually presented like this, that there is one machine which is in constant movement. This has this kind of, it looks like the machine which is like for the water measurements. And the sound is like all around the audience, and it's I always try to do like 360, so it has a bit of more this feeling of oceanic kind of wilderness. This is like the premiere we had during COVID time. So you see, I have like photos of people with a mask on it. But yeah. I will jump some of the projects because I will for the end of my talk, and then I hope there will be some questions also. I would like to present to you a project which is like something that I started to work in 2023 when I was artist in resident on Tara. It's like French research vessel, and I was with them doing the log. This means that I was on their sailing boat, which is like science research vessel. from the Aarhus to the area of Riga. So when working and started to think about that artwork, and when being on the Baltic Sea, as you see here, there is lots of this kind of areas where it's forbidden to drop the anchor because the chemical is like there is many areas where they have been the dumping ground of the chemical munition. This was mostly done after the Second World War, when all the arsenal of the German army was kind of distributed into the oceans and seas, because this was at that time the solution that everybody was thinking is the best to just get rid of it. But nobody have been thinking that, also the iron after 70 years in the ocean, the salinity does her thing. The ocean environment is also not perfect for condensing that. So then the stuff starts to leak out now lately. And there's lots of problematics coming with that. So with the project, I try to bring out these kind of topics. And there are two variations of the work now happening at the same time. I built up one which speaks more about the influences of the pollutions on the marine organisms, because there is lots of problematics with that, because the fish and the marine life which lives around the area where there is lots of these sunken boats or sunken munition in general per se, that the numbers of the cancer cells and cancer developing in them is much higher than in the other areas. So it definitely also is changing and reshaping the life there. And the second one, this is the one which you'll see her up in the photo up. And the second, I decided to work more on the cartography. So it's like kind of like it's done like a wave. So it's kind of recreated the oceanic representation. And it's a research which I did in the Adriatic Sea, where I was going to areas with and what you see here in this photo, this is this area. I went with the special police forces from Croatia to their training ground. They have a training ground for younger colleagues, which they come to learn how to dive and how to deactivate the bombs. Because especially, when you are in the aquatic environment, the shapes can be a bit blurry. You don't know exactly what you see. So here they have some area where they're training that they understand what has which kind of shape. So they can understand what they see when they find it in the open waters, because there is more and more recreational divers. So people do see many different shapes and things lately. And the work is actually here. What I did here, it was like I organized a symposium before I started to do the artwork, because I didn't want it to just enter as one artist talking about this story. I really wanted to hear different positions and options and variations of different scientists. So I managed to invite scientists, special police forces from Croatia, for instance. In Slovenia, we had like civil defense, because they are the ones which they are doing the activation of the bombs on the terrain. It's very different from country to country. These regulations are changing. So there is not only one rule how this is done. And here, but this also comes many problems, because not everybody wants to share how to deactivate the bombs, because they're maybe still using similar technology in today's world, where the tensions and wars are again so near to everybody of us. This is even more complex and complicated. And I also invited some anthropologists and so on. One of them was, for instance, like telling us the story, and we started the symposium with her, that she was telling the story how she was on Adriatic Sea in the time when the NATO was bombarding Belgrade. And after the bombarding, if they don't use all the weaponry, they have to release it somewhere. They cannot land with the bombs on them, mostly not. So what they do, they release these kind of things also into oceans and seas. So there is many different problematics which they're coming out with this artwork. And I see that I'm like, even that I work on this since 2023, which is for the last 2 years, there is still so much to be researched. So what I decided is also that the sound pattern of this artwork is not the typical, because you heard from other sounds from me before. And I like to use the sounds of the animals, of the different environments which I record. But here I wanted to have the human voices inside of the water. So I used recordings from the symposium. Of course, everybody on the symposium who agreed to do that. And I mixed them into different levels. And then beyond that, there is a storyteller who tells the story, what's happening. So this is just like 1 minute now, just for having a feeling of it.
The post-World War II practice of sea-dumping munitions has left a legacy of environmental and safety concerns.
Female members, we do a lot of design research, self-initiated.
The German army kept Enigma a secret. It represented an important
Ongoing efforts are crucial to address these issues, ensuring the protection of marine ecosystems and human activities in affected regions.
And yet they are very much empty. The sea, as Jack Fallon observed, hardly
Local
deserves
stories
to be
weave
called
into
a
the global
place.
thread.
But if one
Ghosts
chooses
of
to see
neglect
the
drift.
intangible faces of the sea, the navigation becomes
Okay. And which is the same. And here is another moment, because that one is more from Adriatic and from Baltic Sea, from one specific boat that is still, location is still not known, like no, location is known to the ones that they know how to come there. But in general, they hide locations from people.
The Allies, the United States of America, the United Kingdom, France, and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR, inherited chemical munitions.
So just to go back to this slide. So these videos are actually part of the landscape of the tapestry, which I built together with some craftspeople from Croatia. There's a company which they are doing this kind of more artistic tapestries. And I really wanted to have this kind of contrast between these hard topics, the softness of tapestry, because I let audience to, do I have photo like this? No, but here you can see, I leave the headphones like this, and I try to lead people into this, that they sit down with the piece, they put the headphones on, then they hear the audio, otherwise they're just like audio of the sea around them. And there's this kind of contrast between this warmness of this material and the coldness of the shelves of the munition. So with this work, I was thinking that I could kind of break up. I will show you just a few photos because this is the project. I was like a bit like thinking, shall I even speak about it or not? But there is this connection with the rivers I was telling you, because I'm coming from Pannonia, and all, as you say, you know, like for me, sea was just like once per year, 10 days, you know. And rivers, they have been my thing since I was a child. And then as I live here in the city of Ljubljana, we have this river which is called Ljubljanica, but actually it has 7 different names. So that's why I call the project from the number of river basin. It's Cosonic 1,848 square kilometers, because this is the river which comes through many caves. So as you see on this photo, which you see here, we went with the photographer that I collaborate on this project. We went into different areas of this river, and we went to record different things. And this is kind of like my representation of this project, where I like to speak. It looks like very greenery, beautiful nature, but then you see the river fishes in aquarium, so it gives already some structural presence. Plus also there is some algae which is like around this other greenery, which means that it is taking over. And with Cosonic, it will be short because it's just 1 minute. You hear the sound?